looking at some questions and some answers that are related to the story of Easter. So the first week of the series, we looked at Jesus being in the Garden of Gethsemane, the time that Jesus spent in prayer before he went to ultimately be betrayed and then arrested and crucified. And we looked at the question, what do you do when you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders? Because we all have those times when we just feel just the weight and the pressure of life kind of hanging over us and kind of closing in around us. Last week, we looked at Pilate. And the question we looked at was, what do you do when you need more courage than you currently have? Pilate believed Jesus was innocent. He just didn't have the courage to do something to act on that. Well, this week we're going to look at this question. What do you do when you're faced with something unexpected or unwanted? How many of you have ever had something happen to you in your life that you didn't like? I should see every single hand. It happens, right? A part of life is that we have some things that happen that we don't expect, that we don't like, that we wouldn't pick, that we don't want. And a challenge comes in what we do with that. What do we do when life gives you something, life brings something, an event happens or it doesn't happen, and it's not something you would pick, it's not something you want, it's not something that you would expect. It's those things that happen that kind of catch you off guard and can kind of take the air out of your lungs, and you're just not sure what to do. Well, there's a person here in Scripture named Simon from Cyrene who had something happen that he didn't expect. And then my guess is he didn't want either. So as we look at his story this morning, would you please just join me in a word of prayer? God, we thank you, God, for your word, and we pray that as we hear your word this morning, God, that you would just help our eyes, our ears, and our hearts just to be open to what it is that you want to teach us through your word here this morning, God, for your honor and glory. Let's pray this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. So there are things in life that we don't expect. There's things in life that we just can't anticipate. Sometimes those things are good, those unexpected blessings, those unexpected joys that come. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're painful. Sometimes they're hard. Look at this verse from the Gospel of Luke that talks about what happened to Simon. Luke 23:26. As the soldiers led him, that's Jesus, away, they see Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. So let me kind of set the scene here a little bit. So Jesus has now been sentenced to be crucified, and he's leaving the ruler's palace there in the center of Jerusalem. He's now carrying his cross out to the place outside of the city gates where he was going to be crucified. The piece of the cross that they would carry would actually be the crossbeam. So they wouldn't carry the entire thing. They would carry just the crossbeam. They would typically carry it across their shoulders. That would weigh anywhere from 30 to 40 pounds. And then they would carry it a considerable distance. So from where he started to where he went probably would have been pretty close to about a half a mile of a walk that they would have to do. From the gate where they kind of interacted, where Simon and Jesus interacted, there was probably still about a third of a mile or so left to go. We don't know exactly why they would have asked Simon to carry the cross at that point. Kind of tradition says that Jesus stumbled and he fell while carrying the cross due to blood loss, due to exhaustion, due to shock. There's any number of reasons that may have been a reason for why this happened. But the reality was the soldiers recognized, hey, something's going on here. We don't think that Jesus is going to be able to carry this the rest of the way. We don't think he's going to have the physical ability or strength in order to do this. So they grab a guy out of the crowd. So the reason that Simon is there, more than likely, was to celebrate the Passover. He was probably there along with a number of other Jewish believers to celebrate the Passover, and then now he finds himself pulled out of the crowd and expected to carry this cross for Jesus the rest of the way to where he was ultimately going to be crucified. The story is told in all three of what we call the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And Mark includes the names of his two children, Alexander and Rufus. But other than that, this is what we know of Simon of Cyrene. But I want you just to kind of show you a little bit where Cyrene is. So here's a map. It's going to show you a number of places there. And you see there kind of in northern Africa, in the modern-day country of Libya, you see the city there of Cyrene. There was a large Jewish community there. It had been established about 200 or 300 years prior. There's a number of Jewish believers there. So we stand to believe that Simon was one of those believers who would have made the journey from there in Cyrene, probably by boat, to go across the Mediterranean Sea in order to get there to Jerusalem for the Passover. And then he gets there and he has this unexpected, unanticipated, and unwanted interaction happen where he now meets Jesus, who's on his way to die. So I want to look at a few things from this story, a few things from Simon's life that I think can help us think a little bit about what you do when you face something unexpected or unwanted. Here's the first thing that we find there. We always have a choice in terms of what we're going to do. Simon has a choice he's going to make. The language that's used here in the Gospels indicated that he was kind of forced to do it, that the soldiers, because they were soldiers, could have said, hey, you're going to do this. But the reality is, Simon did have a choice. He had a choice of what he wanted to do. He didn't have to do it. See, because we can't choose the situation or the circumstance, but we can choose how we respond. We don't have the ability to choose everything that's going to happen to us in life. My guess is that if we did, some of your lives might look quite different. Or at the very least, you would have certain moments, events that certainly would look different from your life. But we don't have that ability. We don't have the power. We don't have the authority. We don't have the strength to control everything that happens to us in life. But we do have a choice in how we respond. Simon has a choice he has to make. In the spur of the moment, he has to decide, what am I going to do? He's picked out of the crowd. He's told to do this, and he has a choice of what he's going to do. So he could have chosen to be obedient. He could have chosen to do what he was asked to do. He could have chosen to not do it. He could have chosen a response that may have been loving or kind or not. But really, we have two kinds of choices in these kinds of situations. The first one is the choice of what action we're going to take. So in this particular story, the choice is an action. So for Simon, am I going to pick up this cross and carry it, or am I not? Now, you may think, that's not a real hard choice. I mean, he's got soldiers, so probably led to believe that if he says no, it's probably not going to go well for Simon. But for us, in most of these scenarios, we do have a choice. If there's a situation we're facing, it's like, man, I don't want to go. I don't want to go have that conversation. I wish I didn't have to go and to do this. I wish I didn't have to make this decision. I wish I didn't have to do this. Well, we have a choice of what we're going to do. My guess is we've all had some times in our life we have to choose between what we know is right, what we know the right thing is, what it would mean just to be obedient to God, or what it would just be the kind, compassionate thing to do. But then we still kind of fight this tension because we know to do that is going to be really, really hard. Sometimes that's what this scenario or this circumstance can look like. We're kind of faced with a difficult choice. Am I going to go? Am I going to do the hard thing? Am I going to admit that maybe I was wrong? I got this wrong. I messed up. Can you please forgive me? That's not easy to do. Those times when we find ourselves just dealing with a situation that we didn't expect, and we're kind of thrown back on our heels, and we're left to think about what we want to do. We have a choice in terms of the action that we take. We have a choice in terms of what we do. But we also have a different kind of a choice, and that choice is one of attitude. Because sometimes the action choice is made for you. Like you can't take an action to really change the situation or the circumstance, but you do have a choice in how you respond. You do have a choice in the attitude that you show up with in this. I know that Pastor Rob has kind of said this before. Like when it comes to kids, you don't just always want them just to do the right thing. You want them to do the right thing in the right way, right? You want their attitude to match the action. Well, there's times in this too. It's like, not only am I going to respond with the right attitude, with the right response, the right behavior, the right tone of voice, the right action, the right mood, so it fits and it reacts. Now, I want to explain this just a little bit here. Does that mean that you're not allowed to be upset? No. There's things that happen in life that are painful and that are difficult, and it's okay to voice that. It's okay to say that you're not okay with something. But ultimately, what we're talking about is like, but how am I going to show up in the midst of that? What am I going to do? What's my attitude? What's my perspective going to be? In terms of not only just acknowledging that I'm not okay, but I'm also going to acknowledge and talk about what I'm going to try to do with this, how I'm going to try to care for other people, how I'm going to try to take care of myself, how I'm going to try to control and guide my decisions and my actions as I work through this very difficult and unexpected situation. That's always a choice that we have in terms of how we're going to choose our response. Because your attitude matters. The way that you respond matters. The way that you talk about something matters. The way that you address a situation matters. But then the second thing is this. Not only do we have a choice in terms of our action or our attitude, we also can recognize that the way that we choose to respond can be an opportunity to bless others. So in this particular story, Simon's act of going and picking up this cross has a couple of different effects that we can see. One very clearly. It gave Jesus a brief break. It gave Jesus a little bit of a breather, if you will, at that stage of his horrible crucifixion journey. So for that last quarter to a third of a mile that Jesus would have had to walk, he was able to do so without carrying the weight of that cross on his back or across his shoulders. It may be a small thing in the grand picture of things, but in that moment, it would have been a little bit of relief. It would have been a little bit of a sense of just rest and relief. Sometimes how we choose to respond, sometimes how we choose to react can be used to bless others. I think it's interesting that in looking at this, in every single gospel, it's always one verse. The story of Simon is one verse, but yet this was a story that was told by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I thought, why? And I think the reason that it was told is because what Simon did is being shared as an example for what to do. Because his choice would have not only inspired the writers of the Gospels, hey, we got to tell this story. We have to tell this story of what Simon did. But not only that, Simon's choice impacted his children, Alexander and Rufus. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, in Mark's Gospel, he mentions the name of his two sons, Alexander and Rufus. So I was kind of doing a little research about, do we know anything about what happened to Alexander and Rufus? And I'll be honest, the information was kind of hard to find. It wasn't a real easy thing to determine, but the best thing that I could find is it looks like tradition says that Alexander and Rufus became two influential leaders in the early church, especially in Rome. That these two young men, because of the witness, because of the impact, because of the mentoring of their father, went out and they had an impact in the early church. They went out and they saw what their father did in response to an unexpected and unwanted circumstance, and then that became something that in them caused them to go and to have positions of influence, positions of authority, positions of leadership within the early church. I think that's amazing to think about. That the way that Simon showed up in this circumstance made that kind of an impression on their children. And that's sometimes how this can work. The way that we show up, the choices that we make in response to unexpected or unwanted things can be used in tremendous ways to bless others. So I remember thinking earlier in my ministry career when I was single, you know, if I get married someday and become a dad, I don't want to be the guy who talks about his kids every week. I'm not doing very well. But because some of that is like, it changes how you view things. It changes how you look at things. It just inevitably does that. But one of the things that I want to kind of share in relation to this particular piece of our message this morning is like, I remember the sermon that I preached when I shared my wife and I's journey to become pregnant with Will and Max. How it wasn't easy. No, month after month went by and we weren't able to get pregnant. And began to go to doctor visit after doctor visit after doctor visit to try to figure out what may be going on. So we had a choice in that. We had a choice of what we could do with the situation we were going through. Because we'd have people ask, hey, you think you're going to start a family someday? And we knew, it's like, we wish it was 6, 12 months ago. But do we want to say that? We don't want to offend somebody. People who would give a well-meaning word of encouragement that they wouldn't really know what we were thinking. But here's what happened. Because we chose to acknowledge what was going on. And sometimes that's one of the most important actions we can take is just actually acknowledge what's going on. God can work in that. Because what we found is that after we shared a bit of our journey, after we shared a little bit of that situation and circumstance from our life, we were blown away at how many people, some of whom are seated here this morning, came to myself or to my wife and said, "Can we tell you our story? Can we tell you how we have experienced some of what you're experiencing? Can we tell you some of how we've been through that?" And it was so encouraging to my wife and I to know that, hey, we're not alone in this. We have some other people who can share this with us. We have some other people who understand what it's like to go through all the ups and downs of that. Sometimes just simply having the courage to share your story, to be okay that you're not okay, can be something that can allow others to share their story too. Because there's just tremendous power in being able to share these unwanted and unexpected things with others. Because sometimes the fear is, what? I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bother them with what's going on. I'm just going to act like everything's okay. But two things happen in that. We hide our pain. We hide our questions. We hide our doubts. We hide our fears. And we don't give them the opportunity to potentially bless us and to come alongside us as they may want to do. Because they may have shared some of those same questions, hurts, feelings, worries, whatever it may be. And then they might be able to share that with you in order to encourage you on wherever you're at in that journey. And not only that, you then may have the courage to be able then to do that for others as well. Because since the time that I shared that piece of my wife and I's story, we've now had the opportunity to do that for others, to other people who maybe have been dealing with different types of infertility or difficulty in trying to become pregnant, or for both myself and my wife, just the journey of being single later in life than what we ever thought or expected. The reality of being able to share those things with others can then be an opportunity to grow with each other, to care for each other, and to love each other if we will simply share those things that are going on. That the impact of those things can be carried on into other people. But here's the third thing that we can take out of the story is that suffering and death can be the seeds that produce the fruit of resurrection. God can take the pain and suffering and use them to produce new and abundant life. So when I was writing this message, I got to this particular point and I kind of stopped. So I want to make sure that I'm saying this clearly. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that God is going to give you something painful so that he can do something good. I've heard a number of people who have said something like that over the years. It's like, well, it's okay that it's going because God's going to use that for good. For someone who's hurting or in pain, that's not going to feel good. That's going to feel painful. But here's what is true. God can bring hope and life out of painful things. So does that mean that God's going to say, I'm going to do this painful thing over here so I can do something good? No. But here's what God does do. God sees our hurt and he sees our pain. He sees our disappointment. He sees our struggle. He says, I'm going to go to work in this. I'm going to go to work in the midst of this so that there may be some signs of life, so that there may be some signs of hope, so that there may be some signs of love. Will that take away the hurt, the pain, all that? No. No, it isn't going to be. It's like, well, now I feel so much better. Probably not the reality. But the truth is this. One of the choices we have to make is when we see those things happen, when we see those unexpected things, when we see those unwanted things, we're left with the question, all right, where is God in that? Where is God in the midst of all this stuff? Where is God in the midst of the unwanted, the unexpected things? That is a very, very valid question to ask. So if you're in the midst of a place where you have that unwanted, unexpected thing, and you're asking questions like, all right, Lord, what's going on? Where are you? I want you to hear that is an okay question to ask. You're not having enough faith. You're not being disrespectful. You're not acknowledging God. None of that. You're simply being honest. You're asking the honest question, Lord, all right, where are you in the midst of this? So I think of that in terms of this bigger story that Simon finds himself thrust into, this unexpected story that Simon now finds himself a part of. That in the midst of all this story that's been told for generations and generations, Simon's name is now included in the telling of this story. As people watched these events unfurl, as people watched all these events happen, I can't imagine what they must have thought as they saw things go from bad to worse for Jesus. But yet, the hope of our faith comes out of these events, right? The hope of our faith for this life and life to come comes out of all these events. That everything that Jesus went through, all the hurt, all the pain, all of that, was to give us life, to give us hope. Does that mean that pain is gone, that we're never going to feel it again? I wish I could say that's true, but it's not. The reality is life still has pain. Life still has hurt. Life still has disappointment. But we know that in the midst of that, God is there with us. That he can work in and through even the deepest pain you can imagine. That God can take that and he can use that to produce life. So what do you do if you're in the midst of that? Because sometimes we can say, well, then I should just jump right to that. And I say, well, I just look for that. To do that minimizes sometimes what you experience. It doesn't give you the opportunity to really think about and to process what you might be thinking or feeling based on what's been going on in your life. Because I wonder what Simon thought after he put down the cross. Simon carries his cross, the third of the mile, gets out to the place where he's told to put it down. And this is kind of the point where his story in Scripture ends. We don't really know anything else about what he does at that point. So I was thinking about it this week. I said, I wonder what he did. Did he stick around? Did he watch what happened after that? Did he stay till the end? I don't know. I can't sit here and speculate for you what Simon did or didn't do. But what I can tell you is that we have that same choice of what we're going to do. Am I going to stay in this? Am I going to stay working through this? Am I going to acknowledge all the different things I'm feeling because of this unwanted or unexpected thing? That when it's one of those unexpected joys, that I will give God praise for that and thank him and bless him for that unexpected joy and blessing that I'm experiencing in my life. But if that's an unexpected hurt or pain, I'm going to bring that before the Lord too. I'm going to cry out in my hurt and my pain and my disappointment. I'm going to ask God where he is. And God and I are going to have it out a little bit. But I'm going to know that in the midst of that, I will know that God's love is there. I will know that God is still faithful, that God is still present, and that God can work even through the midst of unwanted and unexpected circumstances. Because God took the faithfulness of somebody like Simon, and here we are, centuries later, still telling his story. And God can take your story too, and he can use that not only to work in your life, but to work in others through your story too, if we'll have the courage to share it. Let's pray together. God, I thank you, God, that you work through all kinds of situations, through all kinds of circumstances, Lord, that you meet us in the midst of hurt, you meet us in the midst of pain, you meet us in the midst of disappointment. God, and you work through that for good. God, but sometimes what we feel right now is just hurt or pain. We don't feel the joy. We don't feel the hope, God. So if that's where we are today, God, I pray that you would bring comfort. I pray that you would bring strength. I pray that you would just bring compassion. I pray that you would bring community. God, that we would know that we aren't alone, but you are here with us, and God, that there's a body of believers who will walk with us through that dark place of our life. But God, I pray that we would see evidence of your goodness. God, that we would begin to see the seeds of hope and love that can come even through the most unexpected or unwanted things, God, for your honor and glory. We just pray this on the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.